everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Arbiters Go to the Movies, a special side project of Arbitration Studios. I'm JP Arbiter.
I'm Mrs. Arbiter.
And Mrs. Arbiter, what movie are we watching today?
We are watching Gremlins.
Gremlins, the 1984 Steven Spielberg produced, sort of Christmas, sort of monster movie.
Yeah.
Famously derided by Leonard Maltin in the review press, to the point, and the director of that movie apparently loved it so much that he brought Leonard Maltin in as a bit character playing himself in Gremlins 2. So,
oh, that's comical.
Where he was reviewing the movie and then the Gremlins attacked him for giving a bad review.
Oh, priceless.
So, what's your relationship with the movie Gremlins and the IP of Gremlins? Because there's been a bit more than just the movie overall.
I'm very familiar with it. I remember watching it as a kid. So for me, it was always Gizmo. I mean, my brother had a cat I named Gizmo. So, and it was a little kitty cat that just didn't grow any.
I had a similar experience in that when I was in 4th or 5th grade, we did the chicken egg hatching thing for science class.
Uh-huh.
So I named my chick, which was the first one born, Gizmo.
That's hilarious.
So,
So for me, it was a cat. For you, it was a chicken.
Yep. The other thing to note for me is that I actually didn't... I saw Gremlins 2 before I saw Gremlins. And even before that, before I saw Gremlins 2, my first exposure was actually through the Gremlins 2 Nintendo game.
I can believe that. To be honest, I didn't even know they had one. But so, I didn't play much as a kid.
My point is that my exposure to this IP, as befitting the IP, is completely ass backwards. In that I started with a spin-off of a sequel, and that Nintendo game was actually really good, too. I mean, it was well thought out, it was mechanically solid, it followed the narrative of the movie rather well, and it was a Gizmo-centric story and not like a Billy Peltzer-centric story. So,
nice.
Which was fitting because at least in Gremlins 2, Billy Peltzer was the weakest character in the movie. I mean, we have this hybrid of Ted Turner and Donald Trump, who's supposed to be not a secondary antagonist, but a well-meaning guy who makes everything worse.
How am I not surprised?
And a symbol of unbridled capitalism as the thing. But I mean, the Gremlins 2 story was all over the place. And the fact that it had had one of the Munsters as a bit character and Christopher Lee as a bit character was also hilarious. But that's talking about the sequel, not about this particular movie. Since we are doing this as a Christmas special of sorts, Gremlins, does it qualify as a Christmas movie, yes or no?
Yes. It takes place... Christmas movie, to me, equals takes place around Christmas.
But doesn't it also have to have, like, lessons about the spirit of the holidays and yada yada?
Bullshit.
Okay.
Hell no.
I mean, Die Hard, another great, not quite Christmas movie, but definitely a Christmas movie, and in fact, one would argue the greatest Christmas movie. And it's the greatest Christmas movie because a man has to go spend time with family and everything becomes seriously worse as time goes on. That is exactly what Christmas is about. You know,
making shit work when it doesn't.
Home Alone was definitively a Christmas movie, even though it was not the traditional, like, Miracle on 34th Street that you think of for Christmas.
It wasn't the Santa Christmas movie. It was
exactly.
This is around Christmas. A boy is alone, and he just is doing all kinds of shenanigans to protect his house.
Well, before that, just
When
to
he
kind
could
of
have,
try
like-
his best to take care of himself, including stealing a toothbrush. Mm-hmm. Send that kid to Rikers Island.
When you could have just called 911 and you would have been fine.
Well,
But it's a movie. It's Hollywood.
And Alfred Hitchcock said it best. My characters don't go to the police because that's boring. When you go to a movie, you have to suspend your disbelief that
it's going to follow us any kind of norm.
Yep. And even in this, even in Gremlins, to bring it back, he does go to the police. It doesn't help. Which,
Well, don't they do that in Transformers 2, which made it even worse?
well, no, in
or that one of the Transformers ones.
No, in the first Transformers movie, he was arrested for breaking and entering into a junkyard.
Oh, right. I just still remember that moment of mojo. Is that what everyone's taking these days?
Getting high on a little mojo.
Why is that the one thing that sticks out in my mind?
I don't know.
All the stuff. Bumblebee should be the big thing. It's like, no, I just remember that line.
Well, because Bumblebee wasn't the star of that movie for some reason, it was John Turturro and what's his name, Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah, they were. Those movies were too human for my taste.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
If it's Transformers, it's supposed to be about the Transformers.
But-
Make it. You can do live action, not have humans. I'm convinced.
anyway.
Unfortunately, no one does that.
Well, I mean, digressions aside, some things to note about this movie that are kind of interesting, kind of relevant. Speaking of Transformers, guess who were the two of the principal voice actors for the Gremlins? Frank Welker, the voice of Megatron, and Peter Goddamn Cullen, the voice of Optimus Prime. Also assisted by Howie Mandel, you would know him these days from Deal or No Deal.
Uh-huh.
Also, he had his own Saturday morning cartoon called Bobby's World, which was a children's cartoon based around a very not children's joke for his stand-up routine.
Of course. All movies.
How many times do I have to tell you? You do not fuck with me when I am talking like this. Go to your room. We'll talk later, okay?
Aww.
So, anyway, I don't know why, but I remember that joke specifically from, like, a Howie Mandel HBO special.
We remember things that we always remember things so differently is all.
And then, of course, there's Michael Winslow, the man of 1,001 voices. I lost
Yes.
the sweeps, I lost the creeps, and I lost the beeps. You know, the sweeps. The creeps. And the beeps. Why did I do that instead of just integrating it in there? Also, we got to do Spaceballs.
You made it a lot better that way, I think.
So yeah, we had a great cast of characters. Steven Spielberg produced this movie, of course. In fact, it says there right in the title, Steven Spielberg presents Gremlins. But an assistant producer, an associate producer, is a name that many geeks are familiar with these days, and half of them don't like, Kathleen Kennedy, who currently heads up the Star Wars IP for Disney.
Oh.
Oh yeah. So she, this wasn't her first movie as an associate producer, but she, this was a teeth cutter for sure. So, anyway, yeah, I just, this is a good old time. It's a nice little Christmas classic, just in time for the Christmas holidays for you kids.
It's one of my favorite Christmas movies, to be honest. But I kind of have a deep love for the monster movies, so this is a perfect blend of the two.
All right. So, why don't we get into it then? So, shall we get started?
Aye, let's.
All right.
In New York City's Chinatown, a man named Randall Peltzer,
Portrayed by Hoyt Axton,
is looking for a Christmas present for his son Billy. While browsing a basement antiques shop owned by Mr. Wing, after browsing the priceless artifacts, Randall tries to sell his silly Swiss Army bathroom knife. That's a lot of words.
Silly Swiss Army bathroom knife. Yeah, you tried. Now that you read that out loud, I'm like, hey, say that 5 times fast. Silly Swiss Army bathroom knife. Silly Swiss Army bathroom knife. Okay. Anyway.
After botching his pitch, Randall encounters a singing basket, and inside we find a small singing creature called a magpie.
Magpie.
Randall offers an insignificant sum of money, a not insignificant sum of money for the creature. But Mr. Wing refuses, stating that the care of a magpie requires the highest commitment and responsibility.
You know, this reminds me of when I never got a dog. That Mr. Wing's lecture is almost word for word what my mom said over and over about getting a dog. And then the one moment when I did get a dog I called Arrow because I was really obsessed with a movie called The Point. The second that someone got hurt trying to take care of the dog, she gave it away. It makes me sad.
No.
So.
Poor puppet.
Yep.
Mr. Wing's grandson, though, under the auspices of the family needing the money, secrets the magpie away and sells it to Randall. Before letting him depart, the young man imparts the 3 most important and non-specific rules of the magpie care.
Number 1, he hates bright lights. We know that. But you got to keep him out of the sunlight. Sunlight will kill him. Number 2, keep him away from water. Don't give him any water to drink. And whatever you do, don't give him a bath. And probably the most important thing, don't ever feed him after midnight.
We then cut to a small upstate hamlet the small upstate hamlet of Kingston Falls and the smooth sounds of Rockin' Ricky Rialto over the title screen.
Hey gang, you're rolling with Rockin' Ricky Rialto, the voice of Kingston Falls, USA.
We are introduced to the out of high school yet not in college, Billy Peltzer.
Portrayed by Zach Galligan, who, by the way, I only ever remember in these 2 Gremlins movies.
Interesting. Who seems to have a problem of his overheating Volkswagen Type 1. His neighbor, Murray Flutterman,
Portrayed by Arbitration Studios veteran Dick Goddamn Miller,
offers a jump start from a snowplow. Murray is a World War II veteran and still really into the idea of buying American goods, despite it being the early 1980s. He then asks how Billy's comic studio is coming along, and Billy admits that he gave up the pie dream. Late for work, Billy takes off on foot, heading to the only bank in town with his dog, Barney.
Portrayed by Mushroom, who is the bestest boy. Mushroom is the bestest boy!
After leashing Barney to a coat hook under his teller station, we see Kate Beringer,
played by Fast Times at Ridgemont High legend, Phoebe Cates. Unfortunately, her breasts will never be exposed for our pleasure in this movie.
Aww. Anyway. Come to Billy with a petition to name the local bar as a historic site. So the local millionaire widow, Mrs. Deagle, cannot condemn it for real estate development. We learn that Mrs. Deagle, who owns a significant chunk of Kingston Falls commercial real estate...
I've been to towns like this.
I went to college in one. Seriously. We then see the shrew herself march headlong into the bank. Here, Mrs. Deagle,
portrayed by Polly Holiday,
barges to the front of the line at the bank, accosts Billy, claiming that Barney the dog...
bestest boy! Barney is the bestest boy, and I will not hear anything otherwise.
Destroyed a ceramic snowman ornament of hers.
Because he is the bestest boy.
Then states that she is not interested in being repaid, instead seeks to torture and destroy Barney. Other townsfolk look on, looking thoroughly cowed.
Would it be too crude to call this woman who seeks to torture a poor dog who is the bestest boy ever a bitch in these circumstances?
Yes.
That would be too crude.
No.
Oh.
Yes, she is a bitch. No, it is not too crude.
Even though she's talking about destroying a dog?
That's just inhumane.
Yeah.
Anyway, Barney has had enough of her shit.
Because he is the bestest boy!
Gets loose and jumps the desk, biting her. Mrs. Deagle is helped by bank executives.
Portrayed by Judge Reinhold and Edward Andrews. They have character names, but I couldn't be pissed to look them up. Because, frankly, they don't appear ever again. It's just important to know that Judge Reinhold is in this movie because he wants us to know at every moment he is around that we know who he is.
Okay.
There was a news story about it where he did the "Do you know who I am" thing.
Oh, okay. Later, at the same bar that Mrs. Beagle wants to tank, Billy is drawing a picture of the witch as a dragon with a knight slaying her, to which a townsman approves. Judge Reinhold walks up and accosts Billy.
Because he always portrays the biggest dicks in movies.
The judge then tries to flirt with Kate, who also works as a waitress at the bar. She seems to be more interested in getting run over by Mr. Futterman's plow, though. Meanwhile, at the Peltzer residence, Billy comes home and quickly replaces a replica sword to its wall mount for the first of many times in this movie. We are then introduced to Billy's mom, Lynn.
Played by Frances Lee McCain.
Billy tries to help by working a kitchen contraption that cracks eggs automatically. But it fouls up just in time for Randall to come home with certain Shiny's box in tow.
Okay. Fouls up. I do love how all of these accessories have the Peltzer Inventions logo on it, but the P always has some sort of decoration in the loop that shows what it's for. Later on, there's an orange juice maker, and the P looks like it's made up of an orange slice. So,
Nice.
anyway.
Randall presents the Magwai to Billy, whom he has named Gizmo, and passes the non-specific warnings to him. For some reason, Billy is not as much of a smartass as a bunch of corporate heads he works for a decade later, and does not ask any of the obvious questions about the rules.
Things like, okay, I can't give him a bath, I can't give him water to drink, but what about juices? What about sodas? How does this kid thing get hydrated? How do we deal with time zones? How do we deal with daylight savings for the after midnight feeding? What about, the fact that it's always technically after midnight? What is the exact lumen that he can live in, or am I subjected to living like a vampire for the rest of my life?
Yeah, those are good questions that are never asked.
Yeah. Until Gremlins 2.
Meanwhile, upstairs in Billy's room, Gizmo is singing for Billy, in tune to the Casio keyboard, and gives Gizmo a Santa hat. So cute. Then he almost concusses Gizmo, thanks to a mirror reflection.
Bright light, asshole!
A quick patching up, though, and all is well. Gizmo, Barney, and Billy say goodnight.
Good night.
Next morning, Billy tries to make a glass of freshly squeezed orange juice,
Dun-dun.
using another of his dad's inventions,
Dun-dun.
which he approaches with trepidation.
Dun-dun,
It
dun,
seems
dun,
to work
dun,
for a
dun,
second,
dun,
then
dun,
blows
dun,
up in his
dun,
face.
dun, 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 dun. Literally, the splatter effect of the scene when we return to the kitchen after this quick transition is amazing. Orange pulp everywhere.
Yeah. Meanwhile, a neighbor boy in a Christmas tree outfit delivers the Peltzer Christmas tree. This is Pete Fontaine,
Portrayed by Corey Feldman.
a local middle schooler who admires Billy. Upstairs, Gizmo watches a classic movie about car racing.
I have tried my best to identify this movie, and I have been unsuccessful, just for the record.
Fair enough. Which Gizmo's really into. Billy then introduces Gizmo to Pete. Reaching over to hold Gizmo, Pete accidentally topples a cup of Billy's painting water, which splashes onto Gizmo. This throws him into a fit, and 5 balls of fur shoot from his back, which grow into new Mogwai.
It's also really, really gross when they unfold because they're all gooey.
Ew. Gooey, gooey, gooey. After pointing out that one of them has a white fur stripe on the top of its head, Pete loses interest like a typical kid, but Billy is concerned. And Gizmo looks like he's just given birth to Rosemary's Babies. Billy goes downstairs to his father's workshop, where we get some physical comedy before Billy tells his father what just happened. Always the entrepreneur, Randall considers marketing the new Mogwai, but it is clear there is something different with these new critters. That night, Barney is moaning in pain, and Billy finds that Barney has been strung up by Christmas lights. Billy is convinced that Mrs. Deagle was to blame, but his parents responsibly point out that without evidence there can't be any open finger-pointing. The following morning, Billy takes one of the Mogwai to the local high school or college, to the local high school biology teacher, Mr. Harrison, displaying how they reproduce. Professor Hansen keeps the newest Mogwai for testing. Pause.
It is at this point that, how is this, I mean, because this is demonstrating how they reproduce, how is this any different from watching animals mate?
It's not.
I mean, it's asexual, but it's still, I mean, I don't know. It's weird when you think about it. So.
Yeah, it is. That night, Kate is getting an off-his-ass drunk Mr. Futterman out of the bar. He mumbles more xenophobic nonsense about industrial sabotage by foreign nations, calling them Gremlins after the popular World War II propaganda piece.
Hey, I bet that was a... Say, do you think that... Hey, could that have been a... Gremlin?
Elsewhere in town, carolers are doing their thing in front of an old couple's house while Billy and Kate walk home. Kate talks about how statistically the holidays have the highest suicide rate. We then find out that Kate does not celebrate Christmas and doesn't want to talk about why, deflecting about silly holidays. After reaching Kate's house, Billy fumbles the rescuing Kate out and somehow sticks the landing.
It's a Christmas miracle!
Granted, if you have been paying attention, it is clear that Kate has been jonesing for some time, though.
Billy does some really good artificial wokeness, because when Kate says, I don't celebrate Christmas, you know, when you hear someone doesn't celebrate Christmas, what's your first reaction?
Rip! What?
No, it's not rant what. It's, oh, you must be Jewish.
Oh, God.
Because that's like the most common non-Christian religion that people think of. But instead he says, are you Hindu or something?
Oh, God.
Which, first off, like, Phoebe Cates, particularly in those young days, kind of had that very, very slight tan for coastal Indian, for coastal region people from India did. So I guess kind of, sort of. But really, that's just because she's a young woman in Hollywood in the 1980s and thus is kind of sort of tanned all the time. But the other side of it is that, artificial wokeness. It was a cute line, but I was just, wow, that was, what, how did you stick the landing, son? I have no idea.
Anyway. At Billy's house, Gizmo is looking at a 3D comic book.
Neat.
But the other Mogwai are hungry. With a half an hour to midnight, Billy does not see any harm in feeding them. Grabbing some leftover chicken. At the same time, in a science lab, the professor takes a sample from his Mogwai. And
It's
And
meant to look all sinister for some reason that I don't understand. I mean, it's a simple and frankly routine biological test for an animal in a laboratory setting. I mean, vets take a blood sample when they take in a stray. So, why is this supposed to be all sinister?
I'm going to make it look that way, apparently.
Anyway.
He then departs the lab, leaving a sandwich, half-eaten, in reach of the Magui. The following morning, Gizmo looks on to a scene clearly scared. Then we see the Magui has metamorphosized, currently in a pupal stage, both in Billy's room and at the school. This was the result of being fed after the midnight hour, with Billy's clock having been broken, tricking him. Back at the high school, the biology teacher is prying the cocoon of the Magui left to him out of its cage. All the mucus and stuff around is creepy.
Yeah, it's gross.
Yeah. That makes it kind of realistic, though. That's what I love.
Yeah.
He then explains to Billy and Pete what is happening, likening it to the developmental stage of butterflies and moths. With nothing left to do, the day must go on. We find out that Randall has left for an adventurers convention.
InventCon 1984.
And for the dog's safety, had taken Barney with him.
Because Barney is the bestest boy and Mrs. Deagle must not get to him. Bestest boy!
Said convention is not going well, as the entire Warner Brothers prop department is there, complete with the H.G. Wells time machine and the robot from Lost in Space. Yeah, that wouldn't be good for him. Meanwhile, Mrs. Deagle barges in to deposit a check, cutting in line like she owns the place.
It's clearly implied in the movie that she does not, but that because she controls most of the real estate in town, basically she and the bank have a special relationship. Now, were I Billy, I would have had so much of her shit by now. I would have told her, get the fuck in the back of the line where you belong.
Yeah, I probably would say the same thing.
Anyway.
Only a little more really.
Oh, excuse me. Would you please get the fuck in the back of the line where you belong?
I'd be saying, the back of the line's there.
Bitch. Anyway.
No, that would be the internal monologue.
And this is why you're a better person than me. I would not internalize it. Mm-hmm. Anyway.
She deposits the check and harasses Billy. Professor Hansen, at the high school, is showing a film to his class. Towards the end of the class, smoke begins to rise from the cocoon he placed in a cardboard box. Inside the box, as well as in Billy's attic, the cocoons are hatching. Dun dun dun!
So, before we continue, we are now entering the point of the movie where multiple scenes play in a fashion that's supposed to say this is all happening at the same time. But rather than going from cut to cut to cut, I have taken the liberty of placing like scenes together for the purposes of our review. Just so that way we're not bouncing back and forth like the movie bounces back and forth, because it works well visually, it doesn't work well verbally.
Yeah.
So anyway. Mrs. Arbiter, please continue.
After his class is dismissed for the holiday season, Mr. Hansen calls Billy to inform him that the cocoon has hatched. Billy rushes to the school. Hansen gets a candy bar from the vending machines and tries to call the critter out. This game of cat and mouse continues, with Hansen trying to mollify the creature about the blood test.
And that's kind of one of the key things. It should be clear it should have been clear to Mr. Hansen from the get-go that Mogwai are display at least ape-like levels of intelligence. They are fully capable of interacting and emoting and responding to emotion. And for some reason that only strikes him now.
That's great.
I mean,
Timing.
So, anyway.
Hansen finally corners the creature under the desk and reaches underneath to offer the Snickers bar. The creature takes the candy.
After rejecting an apple that was left on his desk, but willfully eating glass beakers. So, I mean, the creature's sense of taste is really disturbing.
And Mr. Hansen's hand.
Yum, yum.
And we cut to some time later, and Billy rushes to the school to see Mr. Hansen dead under the desk. A hypodermic needle jammed into his right ass cheek.
Because as a Mogwai, he resented that blood test.
Yep. Billy rushes to a phone to call his mom and warn her that the cocoons have hatched. But the phone line is cut. Dun dun dun. At some point, Billy is scratched by the leathery green claw of a gremlin and rushes to the school aid station to patch himself up. When doing so, the gremlin,
whom I assure you, the Gremlins wiki has assured me that this gremlin's name is Earl,
was voiced by Howie Mandel, scares the crap out of Billy and the audience, and runs out through the door's vent. We never see Earl again.
Ever.
Cliffhanger.
Sequel hook!
Back at the Pelzer residence, Billy's mom is confused by the cutout on the phone line and hears some scratching from Billy's room. She takes a kitchen knife and investigates. Therein, she sees the broken and decomposing cocoons of the Magwai brood, but no Magwai. Then she's startled by Christmas music blasting from a record player downstairs.
At far too loud a volume. I mean, I would have... if it were me, I probably would have ended up dropping the knife and then falling on it, being so freaked out.
Then she goes to turn it off, with no indication of who or what turned it on. Thoroughly freaked out, she startles when glass breaks and runs to the kitchen. Therein is a little green monster munching on her gingerbread cookies. Hiding long enough to avoid suspicion, Lynn sneaks up on the gremlin as he examines the bowl of a Pelzer cake mixer and turns it on, spraying green ichor all over the kitchen. Ew.
Ew.
Two other gremlins do not take this well, starting to throw plates at Lynn, forcing her to use a TV tray like she was Captain America. That's one strong TV tray.
Well, they're just plates.
Still, plates can be downright dreadful. Anyway. Ceramic death.
Hence the TV tray is a shield. Da-da-da, 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 da-da-da. All right.
She rushes one gremlin and stabs it with her knife, pinning it to the countertop, practically impaling it.
Oh, I don't think there's anything practical to it. That knife is completely through and into the countertop.
Oh my. She then shoves the second one into the microwave and turns it on, resulting in an exploding critter.
Lynn Peltzer is a badass.
Yes. She then grabs a cleaver and a large carving knife and moves to the living room, where she sees a large stocking wiggling.
And
Wiggle.
way too close to the fire for safety's sake.
Yep. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle.
Yeah.
She slashes it open, and we get the classic horror movie fake out, seeing a robot toy wiggling around on the hearth. I didn't know that was a classic trope.
Yeah. It's the horror movie fake out.
Yeah.
Just like in Aliens, how Vasquez and Hudson are hunting a signature on the motion tracker only to find out that it's a gerbil.
Oh, right. I remember.
Here's this scary thing, but it turns out to be something harmless.
Ah. Got it. Lynn breathes a sigh of relief, backing up towards the Christmas tree as a fourth gremlin grabs her. With a 50-pound tree and a 5-pound wiggling demon on top of her. There's very little she can do. Fortunately, Billy comes home and takes up his father's sword, decapitating the gremlin, accosting his mother. Decapitation! Upon seeing 4 brothers slain, Stripe is pissed and runs through the window, out to God knows where. After seeing his mother safely into a neighbor's house, Billy takes up his father's sword and puts Gizmo in a backpack, and the two track down Stripe to a local YMCA. Stripe's cunning and small size played to his advantage, though, and he was able to hide in a circuit breaker box until it was comically time for him to barge out and scare the crap out of Billy. Stripe then runs across the deck, and we see he was hiding by a pool. And of course, he jumps in. This pool serves as a breeding ground for potentially thousands of gremlins. Realizing how screwed he is, Billy beats feet for the one place he thinks he can do some good, the county sheriff. Between the deputy drinking on the job and the sheriff himself not buying it, even with Gizmo presented in person, it is clear to Billy that nothing can be gained from speaking to the sheriff. At the same time, in the good old Murray Futterman home, he and his wife are enjoying a rousing night of television Christmas specials. Something's wrong, though, because Murray's television loses its signal. Yet again, he blames it on a foreign product.
This, despite the fact that his television was made by the Glenview, Illinois-based Zenith Electronics, which, in 1984, was still American. It was bought by LG in 1997.
Going outside to inspect an antenna, he sees the appliance has been thoroughly mangled. Utterly confused by what is obviously sabotage on a calm winter night, Murray then investigates a noise from his barn, but his snowplow bursts through the wooden doors and chases him down, operated by no fewer than 5 separate gremlins. Physical comedy ensues as the plow chases Murray across his lawn and busts down the door to his home, ready to pulverize his wife before the scene changes.
We are led to believe in this movie that Murray and Mrs. Futterman, whose name is never revealed, but I think is revealed in the sequel, we are meant to surmise, oh my god, these people were just killed.
Mm-hmm.
But then we see him in the sequel, because Dick Goddamn Miller is awesome.
At Mrs. Deagle Estate, which doesn't look like a millionaire's estate.
Actually, it really does. It looks like old money estate, you know?
Oh, for that time frame, I can see that.
And that's the other thing, is that this is 1984.
At Mrs. Deagle's estate, she is rolling down the stairs on a chairlift, talking to at least 9 different cats, getting ready to feed her small brood. Her cold reverie is interrupted when she hears the sound of Christmas carolers outside, lamenting that she hates Christmas carolers.
The one thing that she has done this entire movie I can sympathize with. Not liking Christmas carols. Now, what she tries to do later, I do not support. But random assholes running up or walking up to a door and singing, fuck them.
Fair enough. She prepares a pitcher of ice water to throw on her tormentors, seeing 6 gremlins singing Silent Night, but replacing the lyrics with yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Mrs. Deagle drops the pitcher and bars the door, seemingly recognizing these creatures and lamenting she isn't ready yet. Well,
seriously, her reaction can only be interpreted as familiarity.
Which is kind of sad and
weird. And actually really interesting. Like, I kind of want... If there is ever Gremlins 3, I want it to revolve around a Deagle grandson for whom Gremlins have been a, little family secret.
I could see that. While fighting a sudden cardiac event that she earlier readily faked, she gets back in the chairlift, which, unbeknownst to her, another gremlin had sabotaged. Physical comedy ensues as the chairlift operates at speeds well beyond its capabilities, catapulting Mrs. Mrs. Deagle out of a second-story window across the street, head first into the iced-over sidewalk, killing her on impact. The sheriff and deputy driving by realize what happened, and don't seem sad at all.
Joy to the world, the bitch is dead. Meanwhile, the sheriff and the deputy don't notice that a gremlin, probably the same one who sabotaged Mrs. Deagle's chairlift, has snuck underneath the sheriff's car and pulled the brake line.
Oh, crap.
So later, when they see the town utterly in chaos, in literally just something that kind of happens just as a side clip, they will lose control of their vehicle, spin around, and die in flames. So, just something of further note.
Indeed. Returning to the Peltzer house, Billy grabs his car keys and gets into his VW Bug. A Christmas miracle happens as the vehicle starts with no issue, and he drives into town.
To the sounds of Rockin' Ricky Rialto in Kingston Falls, USA, who is described. A couple of other minor scenes happen between now and the next big scene. First off, while he's driving, he's listening to Ricky Rialto take calls about the scene going on, not believing what's happening, saying it's Christmas, not Halloween. Pete Fontaine is fighting off Gremlins Battle of Normandy style with his slingshot from his second-story bedroom window. A preacher and the same man and the same townsman who was buying a Christmas tree at the very beginning and looking on in kind of horror and kind of I can't speak up because I'm afraid of you to Mrs. Dingle's loving description of how she wants to torture Barney to death, even though Barney is the bestest boy. A mailbox keeps spitting out letters, and then when he tries to reach in, his hand gets eaten. And then, of course, as I said earlier, the sheriff and deputy lose control of their vehicle, crash, spin over, catch fire, dead. So,
Death by fire, inferno.
Physical comedy for all the good little girls and boys. Merry Christmas and mayhem to all. Silent night, mayhem night. Anyway. So.
Now, at the bar, we see dozens of gremlins, including Stripe, tearing the place up. Like, worse than a club. Dude, seriously. Demanding service from Kate. God bless her. She's doing her best to fill drinks, prepping popcorn, getting beer nuts. Just seemingly at random, which is kind of awesome.
Well, it's also very much what the Gremlins were doing was what I was led to believe bars were like as a kid, which makes the reality of what bars are like as an adult very disappointing. Maybe I just go to the wrong bars, but most of the bars that I've ever been to in real life are really, really chill affairs. Anyway, what ends up happening at this bar, first off, a gremlin is hanging on to a ceiling fan that is spinning at seemingly full speed in the middle of winter. Stripe and several other gremlins, including one mess dressed in Mrs. Deagle, or Mrs. Deagle's fox furs, basically. Gremlin dressed in Mrs. Deagle's fox furs and wig are playing poker. The cross-dressing gremlin notes that one of the other gremlins is cheating because he has 2 hands and 10 aces. After telling Stripe this, Stripe pulls out a .38 special and shoots the gremlin. There's another gremlin with a bowler hat that's clearly meant to replicate some film noir scene. Surrounded by maniacs and lunatics. I'm meant to sound like Hunter S. Thompson, but I really can't do it that well. And then another gremlin walks up and he's got little puppets and he's like, me, 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 me,
Yeah,
me, me.
yeah.
No, it's soft. It's meep, meep. Not And then finally, film noir gremlin has had enough, pulls out a sledgehammer and goes, Kong. And Flashdance also happens.
With a gremlin flashing.
Oh yes, there's also a gremlin who flashes Kate. I forgot about that. Thank you for reminding me. The genderless creature flashes Kate. Anyway. But yeah, I mean, you were a waitress in times past. Kate's doing good, isn't she?
She really is, actually. She's doing exceptional. Under that much stress.
I hope she gets a good tip. Anyway.
Sir! I can't believe this. I mean...
I quit. I quit. Call the union, call the National Guard. Those things have taken over the projector. They refuse to show the rest of the film.
Enough! I'll take care of this.
We have gremlins in the projection booth. Could you help us? Gremlins? In this theater? Now? Okay, you guys, listen up. People pay good money to see this movie. When they go out to a theater, they want cold sodas, hot popcorn, and no monsters in the projection booth. Do I have to come up there myself? Do you think the Grimsters can stand up to the Hulkster? Well, if I were you, I'd run the rest of Gremlins right now. Sorry, folks. It won't happen again.
Eventually, Kate is trying to light one of several cigarettes in a gremlin's mouth. How they can fit that many, I don't know, but I don't want to ask. But the match is just right enough to force the gremlin back. She gets an idea and grabs a Polaroid camera and uses the flash as a weapon to try and escape the bar. Several feet and a large dog pile of gremlins away from the door, the flash runs out of charge, and Kate feels like she's done for, until Billy shows up with his car's high beams on, penetrating the cigarette smoke filling the bar.
And the front window.
Forcing the gremlins to flee, giving Kate just the opening she needs. The two retreat to the bank across the street, where we get more of Kate's tragic backstory. Apparently her father tried some dumbass stunt for Christmas in order to please her 8-year-old self, but slipped and killed himself falling down the home's chimney. He was missing for several days until she accidentally set fire to her dad's body when trying to use the fireplace. Ever since then, Christmas has been a tragic reminder of the loss.
Dear screenwriters of the movie Gremlins, I say this with love for the movie. What the hell is wrong with you people? It's not enough that her father died on Christmas Eve, but he had to go missing for several days, which implies that he had enough of being a father and ran off somewhere. It's not enough that he went missing for several days on Christmas Eve, implying that he ran off somewhere, but that he broke his neck trying to do some dumbass stunt, being the best goddamn father in the world to just get a smile on Kate's face. But then you have to add the fact that she accidentally set fire to her father's corpse.
After smelling something weird going over, you're like, what's this? This doesn't smell right.
What the hell is...
And the fire...
Drunk driving accident on Christmas Eve. That's all you need. Just something... just a tragic accident. This was tragedy piled on top of tragedy, piled on top of tragedy. I mean, just ladling it on with a trowel. My God. How is Kate still alive? I would have tried to commit suicide like 5 years later.
Yeah, I can see that.
Good
I mean,
Lord.
the fire department had to take apart the chimney to get the body out.
Mm-hmm.
That's just kind of...
And clearly Dad had to be severely drunk to think this was a good idea in the first place.
Yeah. Realizing that dawn is approaching soon, the two realize that gremlins will congregate somewhere dark to wait out the daytime. They then see that the glass portion of the movie theater's door is broken and look inside. After the audience is subjected to more physical comedy, they see hundreds of gremlins watching Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs and loving it. In a moment of brilliance, they infiltrate the back of the theater, move to the boiler room. Meanwhile, Stripe is craving some Milk Duds and leaves the theater. Seeing the snack bars thoroughly pillaged, he looks across the street and sees a neon sign that says candy. Candy.
Yum.
And goes to fulfill his cravings. In the boiler room, Billy breaks open the natural gas line, and he, Gizmo, and Kate evacuate, leaving behind a large swath of newspaper lit on fire as a makeshift fuse. On their way out, the one reel of Snow White that the gremlins got functioning runs out. A bright white light projects to the screen, casting our intrepid heroes in shadow. Despite the projector's bright light, the gremlins charge, tear down the screen, and give chase. Billy, Kate, and Gizmo get out and bar the door just in time, running across the street to witness as the gas ignites and consumes the movie theater in a towering inferno, killing the gremlins inside.
Towering Inferno. It's funny because it's another movie.
There's little time to celebrate as they turn around and see a dumbstruck Stripe in the window of the local Montgomery Ward's department store. Realizing that Stripe only needs to find water to start the whole mess over again. Billy busts down the window in pursuit, grabs a baseball bat, and tells Kate to find a way to turn on the lights. As Kate fumbles around, Gizmo has ideas on how to be a hero himself and liberates a toy car. He drives around to find Stripe and draw him into the lawn and garden department, where he notices daylight is starting to peek through the skylight. Billy is ambushed by Stripe and is shot with a crossbow before being attacked by the weakest electric chainsaw ever.
Seriously, that baseball bat that Billy has, I don't know what it's made out of, Entwood or, adamantium or...
something.
Or the dark energy from the Pillars of Nosgoth or whatever. I mean, the point is that even with a handheld electric chainsaw that somehow had its chain attached to it in the display case, something that is not typical. Normally the chain's removed in those display units. Mm-hmm. And Stripe is grinding on that bat and barely chewing through it. I want what that bat's made out of.
Mm-hmm.
Mahogany. Anyway, continue, please.
After 15 minutes of screwing around, Kate manages to break open the circuit breaker and lights up the entire store, blinding Stripe and forcing him to be led away by his chainsaw action.
Hot chainsaw action from the Stripe action figure. I also like the fact that the lights shine on Stripe's back and he covers his eyes.
Wow. Wow. Being dragged to the edge of the garden... Being dragged to the edge of the gardens department, he notices a gun case next to it and liberates a pistol. Climbing a now turned-on fountain and sticking his finger in the topmost bowl, Billy looks on, pinned down by Stripe's gunfire, at a loss for what to do. And Gizmo drives off a knocked-over rake like it is a ramp, and then grabs the ring to pull the skylight, exposing Stripe to the lethal levels of sunlight. Randall shows up and looks on with Billy and Kate at the smoldering fountain, and after a brief jump scare goes home. Finally, the event is over.
It's finally over!
Back at the Pelter residence, Mr. Wing shows up unannounced and throws Randall's money he gave his grandson on the couch, refuting Randall's claim that Gizmo was sold to him. We get some chastising of Western culture, disrespecting nature's gifts before Randall offers Mr. Wing a smokeless ashtray as a peace offering, which Mr. Wing graciously accepts. Then he gives Gizmo and Billy a chance to say goodbye and informs Billy that one day he'll be ready to take care of Gizmo. As Mr. Wing and Gizmo walk away from the Pelter residence, we hear Randall through a voiceover.
Well, that's the story. So if your air conditioner goes on the fritz, or your washing machine blows up, or your video recorder conks out, before you call the repairman, turn on all the lights, check all the closets and cupboards, look under all the beds, because you never can tell. There just might be a gremlin in your house.
So, Mrs. Arbiter, it probably is the most redundant question ever, but did you enjoy Gremlins?
Yes! I love this clusterfuck.
Oh, it takes so long for the chaos and the physical comedy to happen. And then it's like, it's only a third of the way through the movie when the Gremlins hatch. But I'll tell you, once that teacher gets eaten, this movie flies. It just zips.
It goes on an acid trip.
I mean, it's like we got 45 minutes left in the movie, but it's gonna feel like 20.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, like I said, it's like an acid trip. It's like that Willy Wonka scene.
I do have a couple of questions.
Okay.
As pointed out in our plot summary, the gremlin that the teacher hatched, we never see him again. Granted, there was only one gremlin that was really distinct in terms of physical features, and that was Stripe.
Stripe and Gizmo were the only two.
Well, Gizmo never
Gizmo was more for her. I mean, his characteristics.
Yeah.
Of being quiet.
Yep. But I mean, Stripe having the shock of white hair, but the So, yeah, someone at our front door. But we never see him again. Now, I think we're supposed to presume that he rejoined the rest of the brood and ended up getting incinerated in the movie theater.
Yeah.
But part of me thinks that at the time that he was supposed to be like a studio mandated sequel hook. Because Steven Spielberg in particular is very fond of sequel hooks being planted, even if he's not going to make a sequel.
Mm-hmm. I can see that.
So I don't know. That's one of those things. I'm not gonna lie and say that always bothered me, but it bothers me now. And it shouldn't bother me. I'm not going to let it bother me. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me. It bothers me. It bothers me a lot. Why is it bothering me? That's it! Gremlins
Calm down.
3!
Gizmodo will save the day.
That's the other thing, is that Gizmo doesn't get a lot to do throughout this movie, which is so bothersome. And I think that they almost overcorrected for that in the sequel.
Probably.
Because, I mean, the sequel had a lot of Gizmo time.
Hear the feedback and say, okay, we gotta pull the curtain back and let him shine.
Well, not really, because that killed Stripe.
Anyway.
So, it's one of those things. I mean, this was very much a Billy and Kate story and not the Gizmo story that I was expecting as a kid. And I think that's kind of why I liked Gremlins 2 a lot more, was that, first off, we got to the Gremlins pretty quickly.
Yeah.
It was like, we don't need to draw this out this time. We're not exploring this. No, let's get to the mayhem.
We don't need the slow-paced throd.
You know, let's get to Zach Galligan and Robert Picardo bouncing around and fighting God knows what. So, but whereas this one, it was like, once Stripe dove into the pool, it became nonstop physical comedy mayhem.
Oh yeah, then you have that moment of, oh shit.
And then, well, yeah, that was a definite oh shit moment, and I still wonder to this day how much dry ice they dumped into that pool to get it boiling all over.
Yeah, I'm wondering that too, because that was like, holy shit. And this was a time before special effects were digital.
Yeah.
So they had to use physical special effects for everything.
And all props, and the design of the creatures themselves, all props to the physical design there. It was very well done. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Because you had a sense of the weight and the agility, and also the human-like features of these creatures. And meanwhile, if this was done in the digital age, those things would be, even with the best modern CG known to man, which would almost ruin it.
Yeah.
You'd almost want cheap, trashy CG, like what we saw in Cartel.
Yeah.
But you would...
Or didn't see in Cartel.
Point taken. But yeah, we need the... to do CG Gremlins, we would almost need them, in order to have the same trashy B-movie feel, we would need to have them be that kind of weightless, not really there, people overacting and improvising around them sort of feel. So that's got a bit there. Who was your favorite Gremlin?
Gizmodo.
It was...
Gizmodo.
But he's not a Gremlin, he's a Mogwai.
I don't care.
Okay.
I don't care. It's the original. The secondary is Spike because of how conniving he is.
I am a sucker for the bit in the bar with the guy with the gremlin in the bowler hat doing what's trying to be a film noir scene, and then his friend on the other side with the puppets going me.
Yeah, that one was good. I will give it that. I just love the whole bar scene. The whole chaos of the bar scene was epic.
For me, probably my favorite moment, because I mean the audience. Yeah, there's a bright neon sign over Mrs. Deagle that says, "You are gonna hate this woman."
You mean a bright pink fur coat?
Yeah, she might as well have been wearing a bright pink leopard print neon fur coat the entire time, just to make it worse. I mean, the fox furs were kind of classic.
Yeah.
But then she brings this ceramic snowman head, saying, "Your dog did this." Hi, do you have any evidence of that, or do you just not like my dog? You know, Mushroom is the bestest boy.
Do you have any evidence, or are you just a bitch?
And clearly she's a bitch, and I'll tell you, the scene where she gets her comeuppance is still, to date, my favorite minor villain comeuppance ever.
Oh, yes.
And I've seen a lot of minor villains get their comeuppance. The other one is my other favorite one, in another bad movie that's kind of supposed to be corny as hell, is in the Kevin Costner Robin Hood movie.
Oh.
When the Archbishop of Canterbury is shoved out of the window of his of the tower that his residence is in the cathedral by Friar Tuck. That was comeuppance, because it was, I mean, it's one of those things where as Friar Tuck is handing him all these things seemingly ready to evacuate him, if you know religion, if you know Christian apocryphal dogma relating to heaven and hell, he was setting him up. Friar Tuck was setting him up on Dante's journey about 200 years before Dante wrote.
I know.
It was great.
My favorite comeuppance like that is actually from Men in Tights.
Oh. Okay.
It is a combination of first the whole start with the lifesaver scene. And then Latrine ending up with
dragging him off by his ankles like a caveman.
And the announcement of and every latrine shall now be called a John. And I'm just like, oh god, that's the best comeuppance without them dying.
So anyway, Gremlins. Fun, terrific movie. Can't recommend it enough, particularly this holiday season. Aside from Gremlins, since this is kind of the Christmas movie without being a Christmas movie, because again, it's not about Christmas, but it takes place during Christmas, sort of thing. Mm-hmm. What's your favorite other anti-Christmas movie?
Die Hard.
Okay, let's take away the... I suppose I earned that. There is a Christmas movie starring former WCW professional wrestler Bill Goldberg. I want to say it's Santa's Sleigh, but I know it's wrong. But I know there's a movie with Bill Goldberg as Santa, as a psychotic, murderous Santa.
Oh, God.
Because apparently the story of this is that Santa was a demon and was punished by God, forced to be nice for 2,000 years. And so he became Santa Claus, but now with the turn of the millennium, he's free and he's letting out all that aggression from being forced to be nice.
God.
Yes, exactly.
See, mine, aside from trolling with you on Die Hard for a second, is actually Patrick Stewart starring in A Christmas Carol.
Oh, that's not even an anti-Christmas movie. That's just a Christmas movie. But yeah, Patrick Stewart. Yeah, he did better than George C. Scott. Period.
Yeah.
But then again, I think it takes a British actor to understand a British movie. What about a Muppets Christmas Carol? Michael Caine didn't do too bad.
Yeah, not bad.
But then again, he also was one of those things. I'm going to act as though these Muppets were people, and sold it.
Well, my trouble is there's so many Christmas movies to choose from. And everything reflects when you grew up and where you grew up.
Well, and the other thing is trying to find the odd duck things where it's like, where you have to ask, is this a Christmas movie? And, you know, the answer in your heart, much like with Die Hard, much like with Gremlins, is yes, but it doesn't, but by conventional measures, it's not. And that's where it's hard to find something. So, and everyone forgets Die Hard 2 is also a Christmas movie by extension. In fact, if anything, it's more of a Christmas movie than the first Die Hard.
Yeah,
so
it's kind of sad.
Anyway, that's all I got to say about that. So, anything else to add to the proceedings? All right.
Call a locksmith?
Call a locksmith. Speaking of a locksmith, I got to unlock that door for you. A bit of a sad announcement. Mrs. Arbiter has decided to retire from our movie podcasts for the foreseeable future. You'll be back once in a while if something strikes you.
Yeah, if it strikes my fancy.
And I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that those movies that strike your fancy are on the schedule.
I know that.
Because I like doing these with you, sweetie. I do.
I know you do.
But doing this and doing our BattleTech podcast can be a touch overwhelming, and I get that.
Yeah.
So, fear not, it's not going to be just me talking along. We have a friend who I will refer to as Monty, who is going to be my co-host for these podcasts in the near future. We'll probably end up resuming these like the summer of 2020. So, we will, but he will be joining us, and he will be taking on the role that I take on traditionally, which is the side commentary and the snide jokes and the production level analyses, and I'll take over the plot summary things, and probably suitable since I write them anyway.
Yeah.
So with that,
I'll still be your editor.
I might hold you to that. You're gonna have to learn logic here. So
I meant for writing.
Anyway. So with that, Mrs. Arbiter, Mademoiselle, I bid you adieu.
Thank you.
That took you a very long time.
I was confuzzled.
Anything you want to say to the audience on your way out?
Gizmo is cuter than Baby Yoda.
Ouch. Not going to make an announcement today on what our next movie is going to be. I'm going to be discussing that with my future co-host when we resume these in about 6 months, unless something strikes our fancy to do it before our friend is liberated from his current employment. We'll just put it that way.
That's a way to phrase it.
I almost want to do Iron Eagle for to celebrate his liberation from the Air Force.
Or Patton.
One, Patton is seminal, and Iron Eagle is just flat bad.
Oh. I know which one to do, and I'm not going to tell you.
That's not a good way to do it.
I was thinking the Pentagon Project.
Oh, the Pentagon Wars?
Yeah.
Ooh. Might have to do that. We got a lot of them. I think the theme next time is it's going to be some sort of military centric movie that is not like some epic of some type. It's either going to be really bad or it's going to be a black comedy of some type. So yeah, we'll introduce you to our new co-host in the next film, and you can look forward to that summer of 2020. So with that, I'm JP Arbiter.
I'm Mrs. Arbiter.
Keep watching movies, kids, and we'll be seeing you.
Later.